Good morning, everyone. It's 10 a.m. and I will wait a few minutes for a couple more persons to sign in. Good morning again. I hope everyone's doing fine today. Thank you for coming out to this edition of the Brooklyn Borough Service Cabinet meeting. Unfortunately, my video seems to be giving a little bit of problems. I look like a ghost. So I will keep my video off. This is a DM only meeting, so I will just take the roll call at this time, and I will switch the meeting over to my colleague, Gregory Lois, counsel to the Borough President, to chair. Community Board 1. Community Board 2. Community Board 3. Community Board 4.
Present.
Community Board 5.
Present.
Community Board 6. Community Board 7.
Present.
Community Board 8. Community Board 9.
Present.
Community Board 10. Community Board 11.
Present.
Community Board 12. Community Board 13. Community Board 14.
Good morning.
Good morning. Community Board 15.
Present.
Community Board 16.
Present.
Community Board 17. Community Board 18.
Here.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to Greg.
Thank you, Carol Ann, and good morning, everyone. Once again, welcome to the October 2022 Borough Service Cabinet meeting. As requested, this is a meeting of district managers only. So for the agenda that we've circulated, allows there to be largely the principal agenda item would be the district manager forum and the possibility of then discussing any new business and adjourning. For all who have received, or has anyone not received a copy of the agenda, the proposed agenda for today's meeting? Anyone object to the agenda, adopting the agenda as circulated? Hearing no objections, the agenda as circulated is adopted by unanimous consent. And now let's begin to along that agenda. Other than just a sort of reminder of what was circulated on the email that the Office of Brooklyn Borough President did a training on ULERT for community boards last month. We've circulated the slides. And the other quick announcement I'll make of a matter that came up in the Brooklyn board meeting for October. We will be distributing to community boards in, let's check the date, December, a draft of the comprehensive plan that actually we'll be looking to just circulate it by the end of this month, by the end of October, a comprehensive plan or initial draft of the comprehensive plan that we're working on for, the guide, the Office of Brooklyn Borough President's position on land use. We'll be circulating it to the community boards for their input and their comment. Other than that, I'll now turn it over to, or invite you all to participate in the district manager forum, where we would discuss issues that affect multiple boards, including service delivery from the city and the budget consultation updates that will inform the agenda of the community boards for the next 6 months. Would anyone like to raise issues along these lines? Ms. Campbell, we'll begin with you. You're recognized.
Thank you very much. And first of all, I want to express my appreciation that Borough Hall has provided this opportunity and is going to continue this tradition of setting agendas in collaboration with district managers. I've got a whole bunch of things on my list, and we all know I can go on too long. So I'm just gonna quickly say my list, and then I guess, whatever other, if it coincides with what other people have in mind, that's how we can sort of prioritize it maybe. But one thing that I've been thinking about a lot and talking to many of you about is chronic flooding locations. And I just sort of want to scale up what we're able to do at a community district level, and see if we can connect our civic organizations and people who represent locations that experience chronic flooding so that we can kind of hold DEP more accountable on a broader spectrum. I know that DEP is beginning to develop some resources. I know that Celeste sat through, I think, their cloudburst program, cloud and rainfall management program, and we're bringing them to our board to talk about those things. But for other district managers who deal with the chronic flooding locations in your districts, and maybe Borough Hall would be interested in kind of taking the lead on making sure that we're pulling all of these disparate locations into a borough-wide focus. So that's number one on my list. Number two is I've been having some alarming conversations about tobacco and e-cigarette enforcement, the illegal sales to minors, sales of flavored tobacco, and just unlicensed businesses, which are proliferating with DCWP sort of admittedly having not a lot of capacity on the enforcement front. So I think that's something else that's pretty borough-wide. We've talked a lot to DOT and NYPD about traffic issues, and specifically the another proliferating issue is 53-foot trucks that have now taken to our interior roadways, which they are not supposed to. So trying to put some pressure on NYPD traffic to do some, broad-based enforcement. Then there's also our perennial concerns about SAPO. Don Tolson is now in the CECM director's seat at SAPO. Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment, we talk about that a lot. And then I'm also curious about the borough president's efforts regarding maternal care and perinatal care. I understand that there's a task force in place, and so that's something that I also want to sort of bring into conversation in my board. And then as far as, and I swear this is the last, as far as comprehensive plans and the Citizen Budget Commission's recent recommendations regarding community board roles in land use items, I think that's something that we should make sure that we are talking about in a way that reminds the public and elected officials and policymakers that at the most local level, we are the city agency, that it ensures that there is local voice into citywide text amendments. And so I'm planning on, I think there have been some resolutions by other boards, making sure that that is clear. And I'm working on a resolution with our land use committee on that as well. Thanks.
Yeah. So Alfred, you're recognized.
Thank you. So like Sean, I also have a long list. I won't get into detail, and some of you heard this from me before, but this week my board is having its capital and expense budget hearing. And one of the real annoyances we have every year is the Parks Department's capital budget, the fact that they don't have one. We always get the same answers for every Parks request that we have. I had an interesting meeting last week with New Yorkers for Parks, who are interested in talking about capital reform. So I think that would be an interesting conversation for all of us to participate in, because I'm sure we all have similar frustrations and want to make the capital budget a little friendlier to the community needs that we all have. The other couple of issues that I have, well, I also want to bring up, Sean and I met with Councilmember Hanif regarding translation services, which we have identified as a priority for many of us, if not all of us. She has legislation out, but I'm not sure if it's in its final form. We're hoping to hear from her legislative director today about setting up a meeting for my own board, and we will share information out for all of my colleagues once we receive that from them. Then the past few weeks, we've had some interesting interactions with members of the public. Unfortunately, since we're now sharing the building with the public library, there's a lot more foot traffic, and we seem to be meeting a lot of our neighbors who are unfortunately experiencing some emotional crisis. And I feel completely unprepared for dealing with folks who may be having some mental health issues on a particular day. And I felt very lucky. I was able to talk a couple of them down. But one of those folks has also issued threats against our neighboring our neighboring agency, and they are potentially bringing charges. And that made me feel pretty vulnerable in our office, particularly at a time when court just struck down part of New York's gun safety law that will now allow people to carry weapons in public settings, including meetings. So I would like to reach, I was surprised that it's been 19 years since James Davis, the councilman, was assassinated. I was surprised it was 19 years. City Hall was fortified. Borough Hall was fortified. We've got no security here. We might have it at a particular meeting with the NYPD, but we feel vulnerable in our office. And my intention is to reach out to Tish James and ask for an evaluation of my office. I'm going to circulate a letter to everybody. If anybody else wants to join on that, I would appreciate that. And to discuss protocols for dealing with people who might be in distress and people who might be carrying weapons. Those are my issues.
Thank you. Apologies for the sound of Court Street in the background. District Manager Leon, you're recognized.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I also have a short list. I did want to start off by summarizing some of the things we talked about earlier this year. I know that we previously discussed sharing issues with rodents. These are obviously much larger issues. Also tree pruning, the open programs, as well as illegal parking, which has come up again, and illegal vending, which has also been referenced to some extent. I just wanted to flag those in case we wanted to further discuss. And then if anyone else also wants to talk about the flooding or the extreme weather, I'd be really curious what direction we can go in, because right now in our district, we've had a lot of presentations, but it seems as though these agencies are operating in silos. So I think it would be very helpful if Borough Hall were to be a larger umbrella to bring some of those different groups together, potentially have some type of meeting or town hall at Borough Hall potentially. I think it would help address not only what folks can do now, meaning what kind of protective measures they can take, even if we're not in coastal areas, right? Because we're seeing with just regular rainfall, a lot of our district is now under pressure. And we're getting calls. But they also want to know what the city's long-term plan is. And I think it makes sense for us to get ahead of it now, as opposed to waiting for them to do the study and then do the follow-up and then talk about implementation, just to make sure we're plugging in on a most local level. And then I also have here some relatively new concerns. But before I get into that, I just want to thank everyone for joining the Future of Community Boards meeting last Friday. Brooklyn continues to turn out strong. I think it's really great. We also have folks from the other boroughs joining us. Queens always seems to have one new person on, and I did talk to the district manager from Queens 7, who is really happy to hear about the work that we're doing. So we will continue meeting on that front. The next meeting is November 4th at 12 p.m. I will send the info closer to then. And then two things that came out of that, just to flag, since it's district needs season, folks did discuss putting the baseline budget increase on the list, wherever you prioritize it, just having it on there. And then also for the translation/interpretation assistance, I know Jeremy's going to send some language that they may use to add to their district needs. And the last thing that I have is in regards to fire safety. Some of you may have seen the article on the Times, and I just wanted to get a sense if anyone else in the borough was having issues in terms of fire safety and inspections. We've had a series of issues in the district where you have certain HPD inspectors that will come out, but they don't have the certification training to recognize what is a fire door. And so then you have a repetitive kind of like multi-agency, DOB will come, and then the fire department will come. The fire department will say, oh, this should have like a violation on it. And then HPD will come and say, well, no, it doesn't need one, because they don't have the same training. And it's become more of a problem. And we know about how critical this can be given the tragedy earlier this year. There seems to be some kind of internal disconnect. So I was happy to see the article, and we know the individual that was referenced from our district in it. So hopefully we'll further hear about some of the challenges that FDNY, HPD, and DOB face in terms of communicating regarding training and making sure inspectors are prepared. That's all for me.
Would any other district manager like to raise an issue? Series of issues to bring to our attention? Manager Vicki Walker.
Yes. An ongoing problem we have here in the district, and I've heard it expressed by several other district managers, is the derelict vehicle. They are left on the street for weeks, sometimes months at a time, and it doesn't appear that sanitation nor the NYPD have the capacity to remove these vehicles. And we did have a roto situation not too long ago where they removed about 51 cars at one time. But then we got an additional 51 plus cars back on our street. So it's an ongoing problem.
It goes to District Manager Online first.
Right. Good morning, everyone. Yes, I agree. I definitely think that the derelict vehicles is an issue. With our precinct, a couple months back, they had informed us that I believe the Brooklyn Navy Yard, where they take the vehicles, were completely full. So then the question becomes, if it's full, where are the vehicles going to go? Like, how are they processing these types of complaints? So some direction on what the NYPD is doing with that would be very helpful, because those complaints come in quite often. And, you just heard another district manager say, they got 50 off the street and then immediately 50 more were there. So this is an ongoing issue, and it doesn't seem as if the NYPD has an answer. So if the Borough President's office could press a little bit to at least get some information about how these types of requests are being processed, that would be very helpful. Because if we're just sending them over there and they're just laying in a file, that's not helpful. We need to come up with a borough-wide plan to address this. I can only imagine that other district managers are going through it as well. And then I believe that I think Celeste might have brought up the rats. Somebody had brought up rats earlier. That is an issue. That is definitely something that I think is a borough-wide issue. And if the Borough President's office could work with community boards, I don't know how we're going to do something, but something borough-wide, I think, is relevant for this issue. I do also think that, conversations need to start happening as it pertains to rats. Like, we're building buildings, rat abatements, things like that. These are conversations that renters need to know about, homeowners need to know about, right? Is the type of stuff that buildings are being built with, are they, helpful in preventing rat infestation? These are questions that I think don't have a lot of answers. And so if the Borough President's office could collaborate with the district managers on something that looks borough-wide to address this, that would be helpful as well.
Thank you. District Manager Singer.
Hi, good morning. An issue I brought up recently at a DOT Academy was that I have a major greenway project taking place on Emmons Avenue where they're putting in bike lanes and they're repaving a major thoroughfare because they're redesigning it. And what I have is I have huge restaurants that have built, I guess their outdoor dining areas along Emmons Avenue, and those areas will not be repaved. So we're going to have a huge dip in those streets where these huge structures are. And Commissioner Bray was under the impression that they have to move it while they're repaving. Well, that doesn't seem to be the case. So the public suffers because these private industries have taken up big real estate along Emmons Avenue. And because they're not moving, those areas will have huge, craters in it and not repaved. And that's a frustrating point for me. I will follow up with Commissioner Bray on that, but I think Borough Hall should be aware that our streets aren't being taken care of properly with these huge structures in the street, and we're not getting the repavement that we should be getting.
Thank you. District Manager Perkins, you're recognized.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. So I just want to also support the whole concern around commercial vehicles on residential streets. For our district in particular, we see that it has become an ongoing issue closer toward the Gateway Center Mall. More so since their expansion, which has been probably about since 2013. We have large commercial vehicles that are taking narrow blocks to distribute. To deliver to the mall. It's damaged vehicles, it's damaged medians. The whole crisis has been very serious for residents there. It's been reported to DOT. And it's just been one of those issues where DOT puts the blame in HPD's hands because there's still so much construction taking place that it's not technically a DOT street. So there's very little they said that they can do around signage to deter them happening. So that's
District Manager Perkins, I think you've cut off. If that's only on my end. Your audio is cut off. See everyone nodding.
We all lost volume, yeah.
but somehow got snatched off the table. So now we're back at the advocacy stage where we're getting local groups together and the residents to really push to see what can happen there. So that's the Jewel Street project, and it involves both DEP and DOT. And then I want to talk a little bit about the safety and the mental crisis issue, because I think in our district, it ties heavily into the amount of shelters that are being brought into the district. We have a number of smaller hotels that were used for emergency shelter, and we saw an increase of complaints when those were activated. They were since removed for the most part, but now, with the whole issue around people coming into the States, in particular in New York, we've had 2 shelters, one which was an existing all-women shelter that was vacated, meaning the women were removed to another shelter in the Bronx, and then occupied with single men, quote unquote asylum seekers. We're not sure if that was just asylum seekers who were brought into this space, but this is a huge women's shelter that was on Williams Avenue in the district that has now been occupied by single men. And then we're getting word that there's another existing site that's going to be utilized for the same. And they are in areas where we've had existing problems like prostitution, drug use. It's gotten to a point where we're getting complaints about people going to the bathroom near the parks, and all kinds of unnecessary things happening in broad daylight. So I'm just, I really would like to understand how the Fair Share Act ties into this, whether or not it can be, I don't know if Borough Hall can help us with getting some stats around community boards and the amount of temporary shelters they currently have, so that we can do some real, we can have some real insight as to why our district is being identified more often than we think necessary for this type of temporary shelter and temporary housing, the temporary housing decision, as opposed to moving closer towards permanent housing and long-term housing for folks. So that's been some of the most recent. Thank you.
Thank you. District Manager Partnow, you're recognized.
Good morning, everyone. Basically, we have a lot of the same issues here in District 18, but something that is new, which Melinda just brought up, is prostitution. It's moving, I think, from east to west at this point, and becoming a major problem. I've gotten a lot of complaints about that. Where parents have young children in the cars, and women, young women, are walking around half naked and conducting business in broad daylight on the streets. The hotels that we have around, we had an issue with one of the hotels where they were bringing homeless people. That was rectified, and now it seems they're putting asylum seekers in. They did that at the 11th hour. On a Monday morning, I came in and I found an email from 6 o'clock the Friday before from, I can't remember who sent it, from New York City, and I can't remember who it was. I think it was mental health. Oops, forgot to tell you that we're moving in asylum seekers, and we're doing it right now. And that was Friday night after we closed. It was approximately 6 o'clock at night. I found the email on Monday morning. We also have illegal parking issues. Most of the area west of the district, on the west side of the district, has no alternate side parking. So people just leave the cars, whether they're getting on, going with an Uber to the airport, or they're just leaving their car and abandoning it. Nobody recognizes it right away because there's no alternate side of the street parking over here. So it just sits until it's noticed. And we've also had a lot of tag and tows with sanitation in 6-3 and 6-9 precincts. They're trying to catch up on that, including RVs, which are very big in the Canarsie area. They kind of just made themselves an area on Seaview Avenue, and that's where they stay. But they have been towed. Problem is, we are always told that they do not have enough tow trucks to go around the city, which is something that needs to be addressed also. Not only don't they have the room to put these cars, but they're also saying, the police, that there are not enough tow trucks to go around, that the contracted tow trucks are being shared by the 5 boroughs, and they're just never available, and there's just not enough of them to go around. And I believe there's only 2 large tow vehicles, and those are almost non-existent. Those, I think they have to try and get those like 2 months in advance if they're lucky. And we have a big problem with tractor trailers that park on a lot of, not even just the main streets, but even on the side streets. Whether they're still in business or they're just leaving their tractor trailers and walking away. We have a lot of that. And again, that's something that we've been told the city does not have enough of to tow them, the very large tow trucks. So parks is also a problem, budget-wise and staffing-wise. They can't seem to clean up anything anymore. They don't have the staff, they don't have the money. If they have the money, nobody wants to work. They don't want to work overtime. So we had 2 cleanups already and a third coming from the Boy Scout troops, which is very nice, but it's not something that they're responsible for doing. And yes, they've been doing it to help out the community, but this is something that parks should be absolutely taking care of, and they just can't seem to get a handle on it. And this is going on for months. Outdoor dining structures along the curbs are obstructing traffic and the view for traffic. If you're coming off of a street and there's no light there and you have a stop sign, you cannot make a turn without seeing the oncoming traffic, because so many of these structures are out in the streets and not being used anymore. So the city needs to take some action on that and get rid of some of these structures, because they're causing a great deal of problems. And then last, the smoke shops. We had Consumer Affairs here for a cabinet meeting, and pretty much everybody brought up the fact that these smoke shops are a nuisance. I would say there's probably one every block here, sometimes closer. And they said, oh, well, we give out X amount of licenses, but you have to find out if they have licenses. What? We're going to go knock on every door and say, excuse me, could you show me your license? If not, I'm reporting you. I said, how are they opening up? She couldn't answer any of the questions. That's all she could tell us. So, these are some of the things we hope that the Borough President's office, can help out with, get answers for. And, where do we go from here? How do we tell our constituents that are complaining what's going on, and not sound ridiculous when we say it? So, like I said, hopefully Borough President's office could be helpful on that. Thank you.
Thank you. District Manager Beckman, you're recognized.
Thank you for recognizing me. I just want to add to the list of my colleagues who are dealing with a sudden explosion of smoke shops, and thank Sean Campbell. We've had some conversations about this. So CB10, we're also grappling with complaints from residents about a sudden increase, probably over 30 in the last few weeks. And Sue-Ann, you're correct. I mean, I've spoken to DCWP. Community districts do have a cap of licenses. That information of licensed tobacco holders is available online through NYC Open Data. I did cross-check my locations that residents brought to me with that list. And of the, I think it was 37 locations, only 3 were licensed. So 34 were not. And, many of these smoke shops, I think some of them are gearing up for potential future cannabis licenses, perhaps, but right now none of those licenses are being issued, and certainly the cap statewide, I mean, from what I'm hearing from my colleagues, I don't think comes anywhere close to what even will be licensed in the future. And I think that many of these shops are advertising, are located along school blocks, and that's who we're hearing from as parents. And I look forward to working with DCWP, because I think consumers must be protected. I think our young people should be protected. I think it's an important issue to get a deeper understanding of. And again, what we're here to do is to allow those local voices, to bring that to local government and work towards a solution there. So our district is also feeling that impact. I'm also interested in the DEP cloudburst flooding. We had about 35 residents come to our last board meeting in person to complain about chronic flooding along a segment of our district. And during our capital and expense public hearing, we had the greatest number of respondents and people testifying before our board, many of which spoke about chronic flooding locations. So I think as we have greater cloudburst events, this will be a citywide issue and certainly impacting us here in the borough of Brooklyn. Board 10 continues to have rodent issues. We have a petition of 300 residents who are concerned about rodents in local parks. Today, my inbox had several complaints about rat sightings on some of our residential streets, so that still is an issue in District 10. And another issue are that we hear from seniors and that the board has been tackling here and may look to do something in a different direction. I don't know if my other colleagues have this, is an increase in motorized scooters that are, on the sidewalks and really being sold that, you know, I'm just really not sure how they're sold, if they're not if they're illegal to be on city streets. And I'm just very concerned about both consumers who are purchasing the scooters and for the safety issues that are raised. And then illegal parking, the tractor trailers, Board 10 continues to have that issue. We've had several joint NYPD towing operations here. We have a task force at CB10. We've had some recommendations, including exploring the possibility of doing a private tow, having the city of New York contract with private tow companies, since we only seem to have two citywide. That was an idea that came up at a recent task force meeting. So I just want to echo that Board 10 has many of the same issues as my colleagues raised today. And I think it would be very helpful for us to perhaps join on some of the common issues here, working with our Brooklyn Borough President. And that's all on my list. Thank you.
You're muted.
Thank you for that. Would any other district manager like to raise an issue or raise some issues to us in this forum? We'll go back to, we'll have a second round if no one else who has not yet had a chance to speak wishes to do so. Any second round issues, then I will address the question that was Sean White's question that he put in the chat. I'll provide an update on what's going on the open meetings law. District Manager Campbell, recognized again.
Thanks again. Just to circle back on some of the things that are pending on flooding, there is legislation has been introduced by Councilmember Justin Brennan that would compel DEP to work out a payment plan so that homeowners and building owners could afford to install backflow valves. And when I compared, kind of thought about the cost the city would take on doing that compared to, and I'm trying to put this together, I'm happy to share it with colleagues and Borough Hall, a list of the dollar amount in claims that have been filed against the city of New York as they pertain to flooding compared to the cost of installing these things. It just seems wise for the city to make the investment in protecting property instead of paying property damage claims. And as far as since we're also in our budget cycles, right? I just want to remind everybody that NYPD did make a request for support for a capital project that would increase their tow pound capacity. I guess it would probably be the purchase of land to build another tow pound. And so my board does plan on supporting that request. Thanks again.
Thank you. District Manager Leon.
I was just gonna ask, because I know two of our council members recently held different workshop sessions for asylum seekers. And so I was thinking it might be helpful to have a list of resources or support if we know of organizations across the borough that are directly working with the asylum seekers, just in case, because by nature, they may be more transitional than others. So it may make sense to just have resources for every part. And I can contribute the ones from our area, get it started.
Does anyone else wish to speak for a second round or otherwise? Oh, please
I have
again.
one more thing. I was going back through a lot of notes. For prostitution, I just wanted to flag that we've also had issues. And right now what we're doing, we're going to be working with one of our state senators to host a public safety town hall the end of November, Senator Julia Salazar. But one thing that came up that was big for the board is the distinction between decriminalization of sex work and legalization. It's a big sticking point because now what folks are concerned about is that there isn't a sense of understanding or a sense of how the NYPD has been advised on the precinct level in regards to decriminalization. So there have been complaints that haven't been addressed. There are chronic areas that are known for this type of activity. And it has escalated in the sense that individuals have been trespassing on private property. And there hasn't been quick enforcement. So we've been working closely with the precinct. We just had a change in leadership. We plan to continue emphasizing the need for clarity and consistency on how this is addressed. But just wanted to flag that it may be helpful on a borough level to have a better understanding of the NYPD's directive in terms of how they're responding to any type of call as it relates to prostitution or sex work, just given the decriminalization on the state level.
Else like to speak? Otherwise, I will close out the district manager forum and move on to new business, under which agenda item I'll address the question in the chat. District Manager Onwine's question about the open meetings law update. Hearing none, I'll move on to new business. So yes, at the borough board meeting, at the request of all of the members of the borough board, we here at Brooklyn Borough Hall are circulating to the community boards a resolution to deal with, to allow the borough boards to be to take advantage of the hybrid option under the open meetings law. The short of it is the current, many boards have been electing to proceed under the provision of the law that allows boards to continue to operate remotely if there is either a state or local state of emergency. In the city of New York, there remains a local state of emergency that is under an executive order that the mayor passed, Executive Order 210. The state of emergency under that law is set to expire on October 22nd. So until then, public bodies, including community boards, under the terms of the state law, can continue to operate as they have been during most of the pandemic without the need for anything else. It is after October 22nd that there is a sense, or there needs to be preparation for after October 22nd. There no longer is a state of emergency at the New York state level. The governor has, allowed the state of emergency under the executive orders that Governor Hochul had signed to expire in September. There's only the New York City one, and there is no indication, at least that we're aware of, that the mayor intends to extend the executive order beyond October 22nd. So what that means is bodies who are subject to the open meetings law, the borough board is one of them, sort of need to engage in planning. As I just stated, they've asked us to help draft and circulate a resolution to that effect, and also a set of procedures to address one of the aspects of the law that it relates to the hybrid option, the aspect of a quorum of public bodies membership must be in person. Another section can be, can continue to meet remotely under a set of procedures that the public body adopting the hybrid option resolution develops. And so there's some desire for some clarification. The state of New York, the Committee on Open Government has issued a sort of a guidance sheet on what these resolutions and procedures can look like, sort of like a model resolution and a model set of procedures. We've circulated them to the community boards. If you have not received such a thing, or you'd like it, another copy, we'd be very happy to pass that along. But as things stand, yes, we are certainly in the planning phase for meetings after the expiration of these COVID states of emergency. There had also been two states of emergency relating to, or two other states of emergency, I should say, at the state level, relating to monkeypox and polio. Those have expired or are set to expire before October 22nd. So the only state of emergency that currently, either at the state or local level, that we are aware of would be the local one for COVID that expires October 22nd. So yes, the need to plan is very much here. The other piece, oh, sorry, Mr. Manager Campbell.
Thank you. I have a question on the state of emergency. Is it worded such that the state of emergency that would be pertinent to allowing boards to continue to meet remotely would have to be states of emergency pertaining to public health?
I will advise you of I'll read the language of the law as it is written. The law says, one moment. That the public, so the in-person participation requirements of the open meeting law shall not apply during a state disaster emergency declared by the governor pursuant to section 28 of the executive law, or a local state of emergency proclaimed by the chief executive of a county, city, village, or town pursuant to section 24 of the executive law. If the public body determines that the circumstances necessitating the emergency declaration would affect or impair the ability of the public body to hold an in-person meeting. So you're shaking your head, you've got it. I'll just sort of.
Heard and understood.
All right.
Thank you. And my other question was for colleagues. For those of you who have held hybrid meetings, could you tell me how much you had to pay for those?
I believe ours is about 300 per meeting, and it's for 2 hours, and then I think $50 per extra hour afterwards. I can forward the info.
Thank you. I thought it bared mentioning here in this forum too, because it's a budgetary impact for sure.
District Manager Leon, if I may ask a follow-up question, is that to pay for either Zoom or WebEx?
So we already have Zoom, which we purchased separately, but we just have a vendor that comes in and will like stream and help us set up the Zoom so we can do both Zoom and in-person meetings for our full board meeting right now. Once the state of emergency ends and we have to go back, we'll be doing our committee meetings the same way as well, but we haven't had to do that yet. It's a little bit different, yeah.
It's 300 per meeting, both committee meeting and.
So just for our full board meeting right now, the public hearing and regular monthly meeting.
This is right, Robert. Noted. Um, any other new business items that would like to raise? I also will raise one of the items that was brought up. We are going to seek clarification from you on the status of the legal status of prostitution, because I am not aware of any legislation decriminalizing prostitution at the state level. It's still in the penal law. What I have been made aware of, I understand, is that district attorneys' offices throughout New York City and here in Kings County with District Attorney Gonzalez have issued policies that they are the prioritization of resources in regard to sex work versus sex trafficking. And it's a borough-wide question, but I think we want to get clarification for you because, again, just to be clear, I understand that there's been talk in Albany about perhaps passing such a bill. 2 sessions ago, such a piece of legislation didn't even make it out of committee. So I'm not aware of any such decriminalization. It's still the law of the state that it is an offense under Article 240 of the penal law. But we'll get you that clarification, and if it is indeed a district attorney level discussion, certainly the concerns that have been raised today are matters that the district attorney needs to be very much aware of in fashioning any sort of policy. District Manager Leon.
I had one other new item unrelated to the sex workers. I spoke with someone from the Brooklyn paper last week, and they were just asking questions about the return to in-person meetings or potentially hybrid meetings. So they may be reaching out to other folks. I believe they also spoke to CB6 in Brooklyn, and I suggested a few people from the other boroughs that they might be able to speak to. And I also dropped in a shameless plug for our district needs. So hopefully they said they may cover. We're having a district needs town hall tomorrow evening. It's the first of its kind. So we're really excited. We have 15 agencies participating. We asked if it's possible for them to do coverage. And of course, since we're all going through this together, I said it doesn't really make sense to just include, CB4, but rather just emphasizing that this is the time to, have everybody in the borough really getting back what they think is needed to their community boards. So just wanted to flag that.
Any other new business? The next Borough Service Cabinet. Oh, I apologize, Ms. Church.
Hi, I just would like. I'm sorry about the feedback. We're having some technical difficulties here. I just want to review some of the issues that were listed by the district managers. How would you like us to address them? Would you like for us to have meetings, for instance, to discuss regulations regarding the saturation of smoke shops and the regulations? Or would you just like for the BP to send out communication to the relevant offices?
I think it might be helpful to have them come to a borough service cabinet meeting, because then at least we can all flag it together and know who the right people are to follow up with after that meeting, so.
Yes, I also think that would be helpful because the people that they send down aren't really answering the questions that we need answered. And And this is a big problem in the community. And yes, many of them are near schools, religious, facilities, and these are some things that we do need answered because they are popping up everywhere. That's the new thing. It's nail places and smoke shops. This is all you see now. And it's not fair to the community to have so many of them, saturating, one community board. I mean, we're all suffering from this, and I think this is something we need answers to.
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. I agree strongly. I think that we need to really understand from the agency what the rules, what the regulations are, as well as it's impacting other businesses. We have businesses who are licensed, who are following the rules, who are, getting the licenses. There's a cap, really understanding what's, what the process is for enforcement. Are there any issues, about that the agency is seeing? So I do agree with everyone. And I think starting with a presentation, perhaps at an upcoming meeting, would be a good way to start.
And should we do this for all of the issues raised? I have some like, I have flooding, that seems to be borough-wide. The derelict vehicles and truck enforcement also appears to be almost borough-wide, if not borough-wide, and the prostitution. We would like to have meetings on all of those.
Can I just ask a question about in person? Is it possible to do these meetings in person with the representatives from these agencies or the commissioners or whoever you're calling down to meet? I mean, unfortunately, I can't hear everybody that well on the WebEx, and then people kind of come in and out, and I'm losing a lot of what people are saying. And sometimes I just think being in person makes a big difference than doing this the way we're doing it. So I don't know if it's possible to do it in person at Borough Hall or not. I mean, I don't know how everybody feels about that, but masked or whatever, is it possible to do this as an in-person meeting to meet with these different agencies?
I'll say we have the space. We do still maintain COVID-19 protocols, and everyone entering the building needs to show either proof of vaccination or a negative test. But beyond that, we do have the space and we're open. So if the DMs agree, we can do this.
Can I just jump in on the smoke shop issue? Years ago, Smoke Free NYC did tremendous advocacy work on licensing and regulations relating to, I guess, focusing on younger people. And I'm wondering if it would be worthwhile to pull them in for a meeting to see where they stand and how we've gone backwards from the point a couple of administrations ago.
Noted, Marnie. Sean?
Yeah, Marnie, I totally agree. And I wonder if it would be useful to have them in the same meeting so that the enforcement agencies and are hearing directly from the people who are advocating for safety, especially for, safety for young people. That's just huge. The flavored vapes they're not supposed to be here. And not only are they here, but the stores have sandwich boards advertising to come in for cocoa berry puff, banana, whatever. So I think that would be useful to have the advocates at the same. And then Caroline, I just you said, I'm just trying to see if we heard the same things as priorities in terms of what overlapped and was mentioned by the most, the greatest number of district managers. And, I think NYPD with the trucks, both parking and moving through our districts. the DCWP on tobacco and with smoke-free flooding, because, and I think also these are multifaceted concerns that have both short-term things that we can do to address in the meantime, and then longer-term plans that we need to figure out. Especially, we've got zoning text amendments coming up that pertain to resiliency. So I think this would be a good way to prepare to speak on those text amendments as they come forward. And then the other one that seemed to be repeated a lot were issues of prostitution and where that stands in terms of decriminalization. And then the rodent concern got mentioned a lot too. Is that what everybody else heard? Did we miss? Are we missing any? Because it's a pretty big list as is. No.
That's what I have. And flooding, yeah.
I'd also just like to also support the mental health first aid for those of us. I know Jeremy's going to be reaching out to the AG's office for some assistance with that, but just to flag it again in case there are other resources or folks we can hear from, I think it'd be helpful.
Carolyn, do you have anything else? Or anyone else has anything else?
No, I do not. Except I have just been informed that while I was away, we've lifted the vaccine mandate for external visitors. So I'd just like to say that.
All right. As requested, the next Borough Service Cabinet meeting on November 7th will once again involve agencies. Otherwise, does anyone object to our adjourning this Borough Service Cabinet meeting until November 7th? Hearing no objections, meeting is adjourned. May you each have wonderful days, and we'll see you very soon. Bye now.
Same to you.
Thank you.